What's up, everybody? Monster from Breakdowns for Breakfast here with another second breakfast. If you've been hanging out with us over the past few weeks, you'll know that I have been doing my monster reacts to Loudwire's 50 top nu metal albums of all time. My blind react, mind you. And I wanted to do just sort of one more closing wrap-up episode. I hope you guys had fun. I was having a lot of fun. It was pretty cool to go through those. I don't remember if I mentioned this or not. After we record something, a week goes by, I can't remember what I said. So, little peek behind the curtain, to ensure that I did not see any of the albums in advance, my lovely wife came up with a very clever idea, where I guess if you were watching the episodes, you would have seen this, but since most people probably just listen to this, which, I mean, come on, don't you want to look at me while I ramble? What she did was she wrote each album down on a sticky note. And so whenever I would get to the next album, I would pull off the sticky note to reveal the album that came next. And it was a really cute and clever idea. One really funny moment was as she was in here writing all of them down. So, you know, I was in another room, so I didn't see them. I asked her two things. I said, because I was going to make some predictions and stuff. I said, are any bands mentioned more than once? And she said, yes. I said, okay, I kind of figured they would be. And then I said, second one, I said, any of the albums surprise you? And she looked up at me just completely straight-faced. It was so adorable. And she was just like, how would I know? She's like, I don't know. I don't know what half these albums are. I thought that was, of course, good answer. But it was very funny. And I really sincerely appreciate her doing that because I was trying to come up with all these different ways. I was like, okay, maybe I can copy and paste them into a Word document and make the font super huge so I can only see one at a time. And it seemed like a hot mess. So she came up with a real clever idea and it really made it easier. So as I was going through those albums, I was giving my opinions on each one of them, and I remember distinctly a couple albums sort of being blind spots, or at the very least me saying, I don't remember liking this at all, I don't, whatever. So I wanted to go back and listen to a couple of them again, and refresh my memory, and just think, okay, maybe I was wrong, or maybe I was, this is better than I thought it was, or something like that. So I wanted to just do this last episode to kind of wrap this whole big shindig up. Obviously, like I said on, I think, pretty much every episode during that top 50, if you have any comments or opinions, a couple people did chime in on a few episodes. They thought certain albums should be higher or lower. That's awesome. Please do that. breakdownsbreakfast@gmail.com, or just comment on Spotify or Facebook, wherever, because I love having that back and forth in that conversation. So just a couple of sweeping observations I happened to make. I wanted to give a shout out to the person who posted this list for Loudwire. I believe it is a female. The name is Ray Limshaw. Okay, let me start that over. Ray Limshaw Baruchian. I am so sorry if I mispronounced your name. Obviously, that's not a very typical name, and I suck at pronunciation, so hopefully, whatever. Best I could do. Anytime you do a list like this, or hell, our show in general, for example, is our opinions. You're going to have a bias to certain bands or albums or sounds that you just like better. And the author of this article, I could not help but notice they have an affinity for three bands in particular. And that was Deftones, System of a Down, and Slipknot. Because I feel like while several bands were mentioned 3 or 4 times, like Korn and Limp Bizkit, the positioning of some of those bands just seemed awfully high. Now, granted, I had even said, I believe in my prediction, that, one of this, Linkin Park was going to be up there and everything. And I was right on some of my predictions, but I was off on a lot as well. But to have essentially the top 10 consisted of there were 3 bands that were in the top 10 multiple times. And it was like, it was super weird that out of the top 10 albums, there was only 6 bands that were in the top 10. So I don't know. I just thought that was kind of strange. Like, obviously the one that kind of jumps out to me is System of a Down's first album. I'm not saying it's bad. In fact, I do not remember what I said on the actual episode, but like Toxicity, I guess would be in the top 5 or top 10. So I think it was number 2, which I think is a bit much, but sure, whatever. But having 2 in the top 10, and then same with, believe it was Slipknot had 2 in the top 10. I don't know. Linkin Park having 2 in the top 10 sort of makes sense because I feel like Hybrid Theory and Meteora are both bangers. And if they're not both in the top 10, I mean, you got to put one of them at least. So having them both in there was fine. Again, I did not go back and listen to the episode. I don't know what the hell I said. So whatever I said there, sure. Whatever I'm saying now, also sure. There's different timelines. I'm writing both. Who cares? So a couple other things that I wanted to bring up. So obviously, like I said, the author had an affinity for certain bands. Somebody that was a little bit like maybe deeper underground nu metal fan, you know, really digging through the dredges, might have pulled out a couple of wild cards, and I'll get to a few of those in a minute. But there was a couple more mainstream nu metal bands that I'm genuinely surprised were not on the list anywhere. The first one I clocked was Cold. Obviously they are kind of a more mopey post-grunge kind of band, but they were always lumped into that nu metal category, and they have a lot of nu metal tropes and influences. So I thought you could have made an argument for 13 Ways to Bleed on Stage or Year of the Spider. Both of those are really good albums. Most people that enjoy nu metal own both of those albums and enjoy both of those albums. So I was kind of surprised that Cold never showed up. Along with that, Fear Factory was really, you know, I remember when Sepultura popped up and I thought they're a little bit groove metal, and Machine Head, they had the Burning Red, but they're more of a metal band. And so their album, The Burning Red, was on the list, but nothing else. Okay, so that makes sense. The same could be said for Fear Factory being a little bit more industrial, a little bit more straight heavy metal. But then you got an album like Digimortal, where you've even got a song featuring guys from Cypress Hill, and it's got a lot of bounce and groove. Now, me personally, I would have went with Obsolete. That's probably my favorite Fear Factory record. Again, I'm not saying that Fear Factory is straight up nu metal, but if you're going to put Sepultura and, dear God, Evanescence on this list, then, you know, Fear Factory could have been one that got mentioned. Digging a little bit deeper, I thought Il Nino, their first 2 albums, Revolution, Revolution, and Confessions, are both super nu metal. And I remember when they came out with those albums kind of being like a big deal because they were obviously nu metal, but they had a lot of Latin influence and a lot of cool like Latin percussion. And then they had these huge soaring choruses. I'm genuinely kind of surprised that Il Nino did not blow up a little bit more than they did. But they're still around. They're still doing their thing. I think they got a new singer now, young guy. So haven't heard anything with the new guy yet. Same with Fear Factory. They have a new young singer now. So, you know, but I just thought those first 2 albums could have been there. And also, Edema, their first album. For as huge as they were when they first came out, and, you know, we did an episode on that album, I think it still holds up really well. But it had a big cultural impact. It was on TRL. I don't know. Like, I felt like that was an omission that, you know, could have been there instead of, say, Saliva or, and I'm not going to let this Evanescence thing go. That shouldn't have been on the list, and it certainly shouldn't have been as high, but we'll get to Evanescence in a few minutes. Another one, Flaw Through the Eyes. This is one that maybe it was just a big deal to me and my friends, but we all had this album. We all thought it was great. We all saw their music videos on MTV too, and thought it was a great album. I still think it's a really good album. similar to Cold. It's a little soft compared to something like Slipknot, but it's still new AF. And I mean, I think it's a lot better than a lot of the other albums that made it on the list. So, I'm not saying these next two are a bit of a stretch, but again, if we're going to put albums by Saliva and Kid Rock and Evanescence, I think you can make an argument for these next two. I said Godsmack's first album and Trap's first album. Both of those are self-titled albums. But again, if we're going to put some of this other stuff, again, like I said on the, God, I don't remember where it was. I don't have it pulled up in front of me. But I know Incubus Make Yourself was on there. If you're going to have something with that kind of a vibe, Trap's first album 100% could fit. Because you do have the new metal vibe of Headstrong, but then you've got Echoes and some of these other more chill songs that, again, I think it's a good album for what it was at the time. Catchy as all hell and still a lot of rockers. And then Godsmack's first album, Yeah, Whatever, Keep Away, Voodoo. I mean, that was a big album. And again, I mean, it sort of teeters that line with butt rock, but I mean, so does a lot of the rest of this list. So I don't know. I thought Godsmack's first album would have been a good addition to this list. But again, it's the author's opinion. So, it is what it is. Now, a few albums that I am not surprised did not make the list, but would have been cool to see. And honestly, probably be in my top 50 if I were to ever do one. Write in if you want me to try to do a top 50 new metal albums of all time. Let's make me do that and make my brain hurt. But here's a few that I thought would be cool. But I'm not surprised they didn't make the list. Starting off with a couple that we've done on the show. From Zero, One Nation Under. Obviously, this is a really cool album if you like this style of music and if you are familiar with sort of the, B tier, C tier, D tier new metal. If you really start getting under the surface, a little more underground, a lot of love for From Zero's out there. Also, we did Scrapes, New Killer America on the show. That's another one that I think you could make a case for. What was it? Spin Magazine ranked it the 49th best song of new metal for Waste. You got Waste. That's a killer track. So maybe that one. Now, two more that we have not talked about on the show, but could possibly be an episode at some point. Switched, Subject to Change. Switched is not one that I was really big on when I was younger, but going back, every new metal playlist that you find that, gets past the Korn, Limp Bizkit, and Slipknot and kind of gets into the lesser known ones is going to have a song or two by Switched, and usually from this album. Really, really like their style. It's bouncy and chuggy, but kind of like El Nino. They have those big, clean choruses. Good band, good album. And then one of my favorites, Darwin's Waiting Room, Orphan. This is a little bit, again, underground, but they were super unique when they came out. They had one song that did a little bit on the radio called Feel So Stupid. They had two vocalists, one guy with a very gruff rap voice, did some screaming, and then a Brandon Boyd style clean vocalist. And I mean, it's a really big opposites when you hear them two. They do very little like together because they're so different vocally. But I thought that would have been a really cool one to see here. That's one we're probably going to do on the show because that album I think is really interesting. It's not great, but it is really good, and it's got some cool moments and some stuff that they were a little bit ahead of the time for, that other bands kind of ended up becoming more popular doing things that they were already doing. A couple other ones that, again, I'm not shocked didn't make the list, but Nothing by Reveille. Their two albums, the self-titled and Bleed the Sky, both were really popular at the time. We mentioned Primer 55, the new release. I was surprised Introduction to Mayhem didn't make it because that is a much more nu metal album. 40 Below Summer, Invitation to the Dance. When this comes out, our episode on that may have come out, may not have, but we just did an episode on that recently. I'm pretty high on that album. I feel like could have made a case to get that in here. But again, this feels, I don't want to say mainstream because it's really not that mainstream. There's a lot of lesser known bands on this list, but I just think the author was not in the dregs like me and my friends were when it comes to this genre of music. So anyway, I did my due diligence and I went back and I listened to a couple that whenever I recorded, I remember saying, I don't really know this one, or I, didn't give this one a chance. So I went back and listened to a couple of those, and I wanted to give you my opinions. So I've been beating up on Evanescence a little bit, so let me start there. Evanescence, their album Fallen. I don't hate it. It's fine. But very much like the Saliva album and some of the other albums, I just don't think it's very new. It's got, because of Bring Me to Life, I feel like you kind of have to put this on the list somewhere. But to put it as high as the author did, I want to say it's like 11 or 12. Like, it did not make the top 10, thank God. But it was way too high up there. If you want to put this in the 30s or 40s, I don't really have a problem with it there. But I think I just got bent because it was so high. But I went back and listened to it, and I do like the guitars. The production on it's great. There's a lot of good chuggy guitars. Obviously, Amy Lee's voice is stunning in a lot of ways. So I'm not going to harp on that too much. I just don't think it's very nu metal, and I wouldn't put it on a list of nu metal records. So Dope, Felonies and Revolutionaries. At the time of recording, I believe I said not very new, more industrial, didn't really listen to this album much. I went back and listened to this album, and I stand by what I said. I think it's way more industrial than it is new. It does have some chuggy moments, but I get way more like Marilyn Manson vibes than I do just about anything else. It's not a bad album. It's just, I kind of, after listening to it, I kind of remembered why Dope was never one of my favorites. Mushroomhead 13, I tell you, Look, I've played in bands where I've worn masks and worn costumes. I love a theatrical band. We've talked about it a lot of times on the show. We did a whole month of masked bands. I love that aesthetic. So there's a lot I like about Mushroomhead, but there's a lot I don't like either. And 13 just wasn't doing it for me. I went back and listened to it, and I don't know. They always felt like a step behind when it comes to a lot of these other bands. So re-listening to it, no, it still doesn't do anything for me. I can't even tell you a song title off the top of my head. It just goes in one ear and out the other. Okay, so I did go back and listen to Roots by Sepultura. I do stand by what I said, that I think it is more of a groove metal, heavy metal album / band. But there's no denying that Roots is a badass album. And because of Max Cavalera's vocals, I mean, I guess it sounds more like Soulfly than I thought it did. Because I was under the impression that Sepultura and Soulfly were like super different, and Max sort of did Soulfly as a response to Sepultura. But it sounds like to me, Max just sort of took his sound and put it somewhere else. I think Roots is a killer album. I think it's it's a banger. It's a lot heavier and a lot more bouncy and grooving than I thought it was. Still, I don't know that I would 100% call it nu metal, but if you wanted to, sure. And it definitely is better than a lot of the other albums on this list. So sure, put it in there. I wouldn't put it that high. I probably still wouldn't put it in my top 50, but very cool album. Max Cavalera is the man. He's so cool. And then I went back and listened to Sinners by Drowning Pool. And I tell you what, I'm still not 100% on them, but I remember getting the album when it came out, and I liked it. And when I went back and listened to it to kind of refresh my memory after this, I think it's better than I probably said when I initially, came to it. I still think it's right on that cheek to cheek between nu metal and butt rock. But Bodies is an all-timer nu metal classic, and I think it's better than I probably said. I don't remember what I said when I got to that album, but in hindsight right now, I would say it's probably better than whatever I said, because I went back and listened to it and was like, this is pretty cool. The one thing that I think is not a bad thing or necessarily, but the lyrics are pretty simple. There a lot of times they become very repetitive. But again, that was Bodies, and that's what made Bodies such a big song. So sure, you can put your Drowning Pool in there. I won't say anything else about it. I still stand by Saliva shouldn't be there. There should be more Head PE, and and I did go back and listen to a little bit more System of a Down. And I'm sorry, I just, they're not for me. They're not my flavor of nu metal. I know a lot of people love them. This author put the first album and Toxicity in the top 10. I disagree. I would probably put Toxicity in my top 50, nowhere near second place. And also, and again, I don't remember what I said, so if I'm repeating myself, I'm sorry. Whenever I made my prediction that Follow the Leader would be in the top 5 or 10, I think I actually said it would be number 1. I'm not saying that's my number 1, but if I do a top 50 nu metal albums, it's probably going to be number 1 for me. I totally get why you went with the first Korn record, because that's kind of like going with Nevermind by Nirvana. It's the first one. It's the start of a genre kind of thing. So I get that being number 1. So anyway, I'm going to butcher your name one more time. Ray Limshao Baruchian, if that is how you say it. I'm so sorry if it's not. But thank you for making this list. Thank you for giving me something to obsess over for a few weeks. It was a lot of fun for me. And I did go back and listen to a few of these songs and albums again, and it was fun. I had a really good time with this. So, again, please give me your thoughts. Tell me what you agree with the list. If you think that I was way off and you think this author was way off, let us know. breakdownsbreakfast@gmail.com, Facebook, Instagram, X, all the usual places. Come check us out, hang out with us. And, thanks for listening. I hope you have a great day.